That is the only reason you
So this one's kind of self-explanatory, I kind of feel. Yeah. So that I think should be fine. If there's anything else you want to add here.
Let's see. Yeah, I think that's good.
Perfect. And then this you kind of touched upon kind of throughout our entire conversation. Do you have any suggestions for how I should flesh that out, or maybe how I should kind of wrap up all of this whole discussion about open source?
Yeah, I guess there needs to be some kind of call to action.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, if you're interested in being in what all we're doing in open source, or have questions or anything, I have an email address that forwards to me, opensource@ni.com. And you can say email opensource@ni.com or contact Michael Phillips. And I don't know, I might leave it at that, because there's already been some kind of mini call to actions along the way.
Yes.
Like, check this out, check that out.
And it's nice because I think everything kind of really ties together too. Like all these points really are kind of interconnected, so it already kind of has a tie.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, and just like for my own curiosity, why did you decide to kind of get into OSS, and how did that kind of start for you?
Well, it started for me because it was my job. The Linux stuff that I talked about, where we had to port that stuff over, we had this real-time OS, and we had to make the call. I ran into it that way. I mean, I had encountered open source before that, but yeah, I guess I started to become fascinated. Well, I guess there's another part of my role, which is the developer efficiency of NextGen. So that's actually a much bigger part of my role than the open source stuff, is just actually making NextGen NXG efficient. And I started to notice that a lot of the development practices and the way the communities function in open source were really interesting. It was almost like an anthropology study, you know, like just the way they function is super interesting. And they've kind of like optimized certain problems, and they've gotten really good at figuring out how to do development in a distributed way, and make it very lightweight. Really clear lines of communication, really clear decision rights, things that corporations struggle with like crazy. And so I kind of took an interest in it just in that sort of understanding how the machine of big open source projects work, and in particular Linux, because Linux is just a monster project, and getting to know people in that community and just seeing all the events and all the personalities, and I don't know, it's its own world. It's a subculture. And so, and a lot of people in there are some of the most brilliant people in the world. That was appealing. There's a very broad set of ideas. There's a lot of disagreement. There's a lot of, you know, religious wars getting fought over various things, which is, it's interesting to see the positions people take and the arguments they make. So a lot of that was intriguing to me, and it was relevant to what I was doing at work. So, you know, some of the process changes we've made, I'm not getting into this at all because it's not direct use of open source, but some of the stuff we've done, some of the biggest changes we've made to improve development practices at NI in the last year come directly from the open source community, and I drove them. That to me is the biggest impact open source has had on NI, maybe is in the ideas and the sort of the ways that they work together that are really not unique to open source. They're just helpful for software in general. And we build a lot of software. We have 1,200 software engineers here, and the more effective we can make them by using the best techniques to do software, you know, the more successful we'll be. So. Yeah.
And just one last follow-up question. You said that this kind of all began with the transition when you guys were deciding to choose Linux and kind of open source. About how many years ago was that?
That probably started 2010-ish, 2010, 2011, something like that.
So still relatively recent.
Yeah, and that was a big effort. And that made the NI Week keynote. Omid, my boss, was on stage talking about that. You know, it was, I forget, we made an estimate at one point that it was 100+ man years of effort to finish the whole thing across lots of teams. So it was a big effort. And I'd say the response from our customers and the success of the platforms that run it has kind of shown that it was a good call. So, yeah.
And okay, so this doesn't really have to do with open source, but we did get another question in about LabVIEW. And
Yeah, people always ask about that.
yeah, and I don't know if I can, I'm going to copy it over so you don't see the employee name.
Yeah.
But I actually emailed someone else about it, and they have not gotten back to me. And you're super responsive, and I have you here right now.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
So,
Oh, so this isn't any of those, or is this a LabVIEW kind of question?
yes.
Okay.
It's just like a random question that came into, and I have no idea if this is anywhere near what what you do, but
I can probably tell you who is the right person, if nothing else.
And everything looks good.
and I was like, I don't know who to turn to for this. I've been kind of emailing people.
Yeah.
It's been hard to get a response, so.
I bet I know who said that.
Oh.
So, yeah. Why do we have code names? Why do we need code names for code names? Okay, here's the thing. LabVIEW Next Gen is the next generation of LabVIEW, right? That's the purpose of a code name is a few things. One, it's to obscure what product you're talking about. So when I was working on that Compact Rio that ran Linux, its code name was Dos Equis, like the beer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they named them all. They have all these variants. And they named them all after beer. There's another one called Tecate, and all these different beers. And that's common for hardware devices. When they're talking about it, because the thing is, like, we don't want to reveal to our customers or to the press or anything like that we're building this thing. So when we talk about it, we don't say the name of it. It might not even have a name yet, so it's a helpful kind of placeholder when the name doesn't exist yet. Like LabVIEW Next Gen is not the name, NXG is the name. LabVIEW NXG is the name. But in the same way that LabVIEW has versions, right? 2016, 2017, 2018, whatever. Next Gen has versions. So the different I guess Better LabVIEW was one of the things we called Next Gen at one point, but that's we haven't called it that in a long time. The Cardassia A was the first release of Next Gen. Cardassia B was the second release of Next Gen. Cardassia C was the next one. Now, there's actually a blog post on this that Christina Dellis did. And I'll see if I can send it to you.
Yeah.
But those code names are pretty meaningful. Like Windows 7 internal at Microsoft was called Longhorn. I think it was Windows 7. It might have been Windows 7. Anyway, part of the point of that is so the developers, it's a fun word for the developers to sort of hang their hat on and say, I worked on Longhorn, I worked on whatever. And that's how internally the company refers to it. So what you're really seeing here is different releases of the same thing. So they're not, the reason we have different names is because we are talking about different things. So this just tells me like how little people know about what we're actually even talking about. Because they're like, why do we need this? It's like, well, we need this because you're not talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Cardassia A and Cardassia B. Cardassia A is the thing that's going to be announced and shipping at NI Week. Cardassia B is the thing that's going to be shipping in like the fall. And then Armadillo is the thing that's going to ship after that, and Cobra is the thing after that, and Lynx is the thing after that, and there's like 5 names already planned out. The fun thing about those names is we have development for Next Gen happening in Austin, Shanghai, Romania, and Toronto, and India, and even more places. And the names that we came up with here, starting with Armadillo, were basically each branch voted on an animal that represents where they are, where they live, to represent that. So obviously Armadillo was the Austin folks, and then Cobra was in India. And I think Canada, the Toronto people got like Whiskey Jack, some weird animal on there. So anyway, there's a story behind this, but it's also just like, this is just about saying we don't want to say the name of it because we might be talking in mixed company where it's not okay.
Yeah.
And 2, we need to be able to refer to specific versions of it independently.
That makes sense. So it's not code names or code names. They're literally different things.
Yeah, they're code names for releases.
Okay.
LabVIEW Next Gen, Better LabVIEW, NXG, those are all the same thing. But the A, B, C, Armadillo, Cobra, all that, those are code names for releases, different releases. Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
The other thing is, if you called it something, then now you can't change what it is. It's like, Better LabVIEW is kind of a mistake in a way, because like, well, what if it's not so much focused on LabVIEW? What if we change our mind and say we're going to focus more on, data acquisition libraries than we are on LabVIEW itself? Then now it's called Better LabVIEW, and that's a misnomer. So let's not get ourselves bogged down in trying to give it a name that implies a certain
Because it's kind of a finality to a name once,
Yeah.
once you give it to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it becomes about something else, then we screwed up. So yeah,
That makes a lot of
that's a
sense.
long answer to that question.
No, it makes sense. So I think my only other question regarding this is that would you recommend adapting this for global, or is this more of a primarily like a U.S. issue? Like if we decided to do an Ask Nigel on it?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good idea. We should do an Ask Nigel on this.
Yeah.
What do you mean by adapting it for global?
So actually, because I forgot. So basically, the way Ion and I works is that we actually have different editions for different locations.
Yeah.
So articles can either go into global, meaning they'll go to all branches, or they'll go into US. Ask Nigels usually go to US because they're typically very corporate and Austin central, just because a lot of facility questions, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we were thinking of using this for a global Ask Nigel kind of column, and we were just wanted to make sure that this is like applies to everyone,
Totally
and it would
does.
be
It's very international, right?
Okay.
The name Cobra came from
Exactly.
the Bangalore branch.
Okay, just making sure. And
Yep.
after I draft this up, would you be okay with me maybe sending it over? You can give it a final look.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Say like, oh no, you're totally off target.
Yeah, and it's really easy to come off like you don't know what you're talking about with software and open source because the terminology is so thick. But there's also some good on the codename stuff. Christy Dellis would be a good person for you to talk to. Christina, Christiina, Dellis, Dellas. She was part of designing, coming up with the code names we have, and she worked with our visual designers actually on creating iconography for Armadillo, Cobra, and all that. So you could use that in the
in the post too.
in the post. Yeah.
That would be really great. So I'm sorry.
No worries.
So just to sum it up, I'll send you an email about this later, but it would be great if I could get maybe the article that you were talking about, the really cool one, and then your presentation, and then maybe if you could point me toward the blog post that you just mentioned with Christina, or I can also contact her myself.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to track it down.
And that all sounds really great. Thank
All
you
right,
so much.
absolutely.
I really appreciate you
Yeah.
talking with me. I hope
Sure
I
thing.
didn't take up too much of your day.
No, this is cool. I'm really glad to see this is
Yeah.
gonna have some value.
I'm excited to get it all out to everyone. Thank you. Have a great day.